Ruble versus dollar, Russia's currency war strategy. The ruble is going to war with the US dollar, and Russia is betting its entire future on winning. That might sound dramatic, but right now, in the world's most powerful financial institutions, a silent battle is unfolding. Not with tanks, not with missiles, but with currencies. Right now, in boardrooms, policy circles, and trading floors around the world, an invisible battle is underway. At the center of this war, the Russian ruble, once a regional currency relegated to Eastern Europe, now emerging as a player that challenges the dominance of the US dollar. This battle doesn't stay in Moscow or Washington. It spreads into your savings, your investments, your inflation rate, and the price you pay for everything. So today, we're breaking down ruble versus dollar, Russia's currency war strategy, and what's really happening right now. And by the end of this video, you'll learn why Russia is deliberately pushing the ruble into the spotlight, how the dollar's dominance is being tested like never before, hidden financial tactics governments don't want you to know, and what this means for global trade, inflation, and power. But first, let's rewind the clock, because to understand how we got here, we have to understand how money became power in the first place. Currency and control. For decades, the US dollar has been more than just a money note. It's been the backbone of the global economy. Oil priced in dollars, commodities traded in dollars, international debt issued in dollars. Why? Because after World War II, the U.S. had the world's largest economy, deepest financial markets, and most liquid currency. That made the dollar the reserve currency, the world's safe money. But dominance like that breeds tension. For decades, economists, nations, and political thinkers have asked the same question. What if the dollar loses its throne? Because when a nation's currency is the world's reserve unit, it gains privileges. Lower borrowing costs, stronger geopolitical influence, ability to enforce sanctions, and leverage over global finance. Which means, if an alternate currency rises, the influence of the dollar is diluted. That's the core of the currency war, and Russia is positioning itself squarely in that conflict. Ruble rises from sanctions. Let's talk about something counterintuitive. Sanctions, the very tools designed to weaken Russia, may have inadvertently strengthened the ruble. After 2022, Western sanctions aimed to cripple Russia by cutting off access to global financial networks, limiting its ability to transact in dollars and euros, restricting access to Western banks and clearinghouses. The idea was simple. No trade leads to no money, leads to economic collapse. But it didn't work like that. Instead, Russia adapted. 1. Shifted energy sales away from dollars and euros. Moscow demanded energy payments in rubles, or alternative currencies, from key buyers. 2. Built new financial infrastructure. Russia accelerated partnerships with nations like China, India, Turkey, and parts of the Middle East to settle trade outside Western systems. 3. Restricted currency outflows. By controlling ruble movement and imposing capital controls, Russia defended its currency from runaway depreciation. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. Instead of the ruble collapsing under sanctions, the ruble began strengthening relative to expectations, and now economists are asking an uncomfortable question. Is Russia steering a deliberate strategy to weaken the dollar's global role? Quick reality check. If the world suddenly shifts away from the dollar, would prices stay the same? Would loans still be cheap? Would markets still be predictable? Exactly. No one has a clear answer. The present scenario. Today, the international monetary system looks very different than it did just 5 years ago. The dollar is still dominant, but its share in global reserves is shrinking. Countries hold less of their foreign exchange in US dollars and more in euros, Chinese yuan gold, regional currency baskets. Russia has been quietly pushing the ruble into this mix through bold financial moves. Let's unpack the key pillars of Russia's strategy. 1. Energy payments beyond the dollar. In 2023 to 2025, Russia began requiring some energy trade payments in rubles, or alternative settlement currencies. Why does that matter? Because energy exports represent massive transaction volumes, often larger than entire national budgets. If you force purchasers to pay in rubles, you create demand for the ruble, incentive for foreign buyers to hold rubles, a currency cycle that isn't dependent on the US. It's a structural shift, not a price hike, but a currency leech away from the dollar. And this isn't a side play. It's a core part of Moscow's currency strategy. 2. Partnerships with non-Western financial systems. Russia isn't doing this alone. Russia's central bank actively engages with China's cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, BRICS payment arrangements, regional trade settlements with India, Turkey, and Africa. These networks allow direct transactions without SWIFT, the US-dominated financial messaging system. When large trade flows bypass SWIFT and the dollar, you're not just changing payment rails, you're changing power dynamics. Countries that rely on their own currency instead of the dollar gain greater monetary independence, reduced exposure to US sanctions, diversification of reserves, and that matters. 3. Capital controls and currency defense. When sanctions hit, the natural response would be for the ruble to collapse, just like any other sanctioned currency. But Russia's central bank deployed currency purchase requirements, limits on currency trading, strategic controls on outflows. This prevented a ruble rout, and today, instead of being a weak currency, the ruble behaves more stable than expected. This isn't luck, it's policy. What this means for the dollar. Let's be clear, the US dollar remains the world's dominant currency. But dominance is not invincibility. Right now, the dollar's share of global reserves is trending downward. Some countries increasingly prefer alternatives. Global trade agreements are multiplying outside the dollar system. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens quietly, through currency settlements, through energy pricing, through bilateral trade deals, and through alliances that bypass US control. That's the currency war. It's not loud. It's not explosive. It's structural. It's financial. And it's strategic. The global response, what Western powers are doing, the United States and its allies aren't ignoring these shifts. Policy responses include 1. Strengthening alliances in currency policy. The U.S. works with Europe, Japan, and others to maintain the dollar as a reserve currency. 2. Encouraging alternatives within the dollar system. To keep the dollar relevant, the Fed and Treasury promote deeper markets and liquidity. 3. Monitoring foreign exchange swaps and currency hedging. This reduces pressure from speculative attacks on the dollar. But here's the challenge. Policy moves react to market changes. Russia's strategy is proactive. It's not merely responding to sanctions. It's shaping new markets where the dollar is less central. And that's where the real battlefield lies. Imagine, for a moment, a world where major oil producers price in something other than dollars. Countries settle trade in currencies other than dollars. Capital markets operate without dollar dominance, not impossible, not distant, and not theoretical. It's what Russia and some of its partners are quietly building. The geopolitical ripple effects. Currency war isn't just economics. It influences trade alliances, countries aligning based on financial infrastructure, diplomacy. Currencies can be leveraged in negotiations, sanctions, treaties, and partnerships. Military strategy. If a nation's economy isn't tied to the dollar system, it has greater strategic autonomy. This is why currency dominates national policy. It's not about money, it's about power. And here's where it gets even more interesting. BRICS and the new payment networks. The BRICS group, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, has been forming alternative financial linkages. Trade settlement mechanisms, cross-currency agreements, and shared financial infrastructure are being built. This is not a loose alliance. It's a financial infrastructure alternative. If nations trust each other's currencies, the dollar's monopoly weakens. And that has implications for global debt issuance, IMF programs, World Bank funding, international investment flows. This isn't small. It's systemic. Why this matters to you. Currency is not abstract. It affects interest rates, inflation, savings, investments, jobs, energy prices, global purchasing power. When the dollar's dominance changes, the entire global financial architecture shifts with it. And right now, Russia's currency strategy is feeding directly into that shift, not with noise, not with fanfare, with strategy, patience, and calculated moves. So if you want to understand how money becomes power, this is one of the biggest stories of our time. Subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping global finance, power, and your future. Because in this war, money is the battlefield and power is the prize.